floods that are related to the coming of this rainfall. I'm really humbled to participate on this panel, talk about the things that interest us and affect us as the youth. So I'm looking forward to the deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Marhaba, good morning. This is good morning in Arabic. My name is Yusuf Turman. I am the Managing Director of the Arab States Research and Education Network. So similar to what Wakrin is doing, we are providing connectivity and infrastructure services to the Arab region, of course, including North Africa. And we promote ourselves as science cooperation facilitator. So we are here to see how we can support GEO and facilitate cooperation and services to this community, which is of interest to us.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the invitation to be here and participate. My name is Michael Gould. I've got two hats. I'm a professor at a university in Spain near Valencia. I've been teaching GIS there since 1997. And I joined Esri's education team in 2009. And so since 2009, I've had the opportunity to visit about 400 universities around the world and to work indirectly with about 10,000 universities through our regional offices. And our education team also works more widely with also schools, museums, libraries, and informal education. So I think at some point I might talk a little bit more about informal education. We all need to be educating ourselves every day, not just talking about youth getting educated. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Atherton. I work for an organisation called GEO. We're the Pan-European Research and Education Network, very similar to WACREN, ASREN and Red Clara, who've spoken before. If you've ever heard of EduGain, that's the service that we kind of brought out to the world for everyone to use. My other hat is I'm currently a master's student as well, so studying part-time while also working full-time, which is a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm really interested to hear what everyone here thinks about the future, because after all, we're going to inherit things in 2025 and onwards. So.
Good morning. My name is Andreas Obrecht. I'm not really part of the panel. I'm one of the organizers. I work in the GEO Secretariat and I'm supporting the Post-2025 working group. So there is a working group that is now developing a draft for a Post-2025 GEO. And part of the work of the working group is to do outreach and talk to different stakeholders. So I'm very happy that we can have this meeting here to talk about, youth, research, early career scientists, how to better engage in GEO, how to make GEO more useful for different stakeholders. And I think those are questions that we will talk about today. So I will be also leaving the stage right now, but I hope we have a good discussion. A big part of this session will be interactive, so we are looking forward to engaging with you. It's of course a little bit challenging in this big room to be interactive, but we will do our best to do so. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you, Andreas. So what we will have is a presentation from the research networks to sort of establish the opportunities for youth and in GEO. And then we will follow that with insights from the youth perspective. And then we would have some interaction with the audience through interactive slides. And then we will conclude with remarks from Michael. So without any further ado, we'll let Mark start the presentation from the entrance. Thank you, Mark.
It is on? Okay, yes. So thank you. I will try to introduce you to the world of the research and education networks. I hope not to say too many silly things, and I hope that my colleagues will intervene in that case. But so we can maybe start with the presentation. I don't know. The first slide should be actually a video that I would like to share for. That's not I don't know if it works. There we have. So introducing I think you will all recognize the face on this video, but I hope we can yes, please.
I wanted to act as if the house was on fire, because it is. Adults keep saying that we owe it to the young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as if you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if the house was on fire, because it is.
Okay, thank you. I think you all recognized Greta Thunberg, of course, a very familiar face since a few years, since the beginning of the
I wanted to act as if the
movement. And really, why I'm showing this, it's a bit like, how did we get there, actually? It's the science, of course, at the basis of all the conclusions that we have gathered. I mean, the scientific community and so on, they came from science. But how did so much science get to the public, get to the students, get to the general public? Well, it's basically thanks to this digital era that. And with the birth of the internet, of course. And that's why I'm also here showing what research and education networks are for, actually. It's a kind of the hidden link that originally was invented by the academic community, really. You have these two people, Tim Berners-Lee and Vint Cerf, that are really basically at the origin of the birth of the internet, and the internet that gives science and research, including Earth observation, of course, a tool to share and process data and reach eventually also the whole decision process in general. Next slide, please. So, what is the Research and Education Networks community? It's basically here you have a few figures showing what it consists of. Really, there's a big, larger community at large that connects many of the regions of the world, around the world. Around 30,000 universities connected around the world, and access to large research resources. I will insist in particular to a part of this scheme, which is the Atlantic Triangle that you see between Europe, South America, and Africa. I think it might be of interest in particular in our context. Next slide, please. 1st of June 2021 is a milestone for, at least for Red Clara and for the research and education communities between Europe and Latin America, and also we hope that this will be part of the triangle with Africa also. This is the inauguration of the Bella cable, of the Ella-Link cable, actually, of which Bella has a portion of capacity. You have the picture here of the inauguration that took place in a small town in Portugal called Sines, where the cable landing station is based. You have on the left-hand side, you have astronaut Marcos Ponte from Brazil that came for the inauguration on that date. And on the right-hand side, it's the Portuguese Prime Minister, Antonio Costa, who inaugurated the cable. Next slide, please. So here you have a schematic representation of what the Bella project reached, which is basically one of the main things is this transatlantic connection through the Ella-Link cable. You have a few pictures, and then the part of the resulting infrastructure that the Bella project gave birth to. Next slide, please. So but from there, what is the value proposition for Earth observation of the research and education networks? Really, it's a conjunction and integration at national, at regional, and at a global level of it's multidisciplinary infrastructure. It's in infrastructure networks and digital technologies, and also human networks. Network of researchers, academics, teachers, students, and so on. So what we are aiming at is to leverage the exponential development of data, basically, in information, knowledge, dissemination, education, and capacities. This will help, in turn, to support the process from data to diagnostics and to solutions and to possible decision-making process. So I think we're trying to contribute to that chain, basically, in terms of innovations, also in terms of attitudes and behaviors. Next slide, please. I'm sharing now a slide from GEO that Chris allowed me to show. This is really, GEO is the European research and education networks connecting Europe together and to the rest of the world. You have here a scheme of that. Maybe Chris, after that, can comment if you want some more information on it. Next slide, please. And another slide from GEO, which is more representing the connections of GEO with all the other research and education networks, regional research and education networks around the world. North America, Internet to Canada, Red Clara in Latin America, WACREN, ASFREN, in UbuntuNet Alliance in Africa, and then the Asian and Pacific area also. Next slide, please. So what would be the scope of this, of our contribution to the Earth observation? I think we can say that it would be to strengthen the capacity development. I mean, this is one of the elements, maybe not the only one, but one important element. It's to strengthen capacity development and knowledge management in thematic areas in Earth observation, articulating with the regional research and education networks, WACREN, ASREN, GEO, Red Clara, Ubuntu Net Alliance, and so on. And then, in turn, with the national research and education networks and their institutions, with organizations such like GEO, AfriGEO, EuroGEO, also with Copernicus and, for instance, the Institute for Climate Change in the Americas, or all institutions that have a direct impact with the SDGs. Next slide, please. So we can say that the strategy pillars of this conjunction of efforts would be to advocate for the use and dissemination of open access knowledge in innovation, science, and technology. That would be the basis. And building on an international, regional, and local engagement for capacity development in particular, and then to promote the development of specific products for the academic community, for the education community, for the innovation community as at large. And next slide, please. So we reached an agreement between research and education networks, regional research and education networks, through the Katowice Declaration, which was really an agreement that where we gathered different points of action that we hope to concrete into specific actions. And these are basically the 12 points that would be included in that agreement. It was signed in Trieste in June of this year, first of all, between ASREN, GEO, and Red Clara, and we hope that also WACREN would join the declaration, of course, and at large the idea is to be inclusive, of course, for the whole research and education network community. So I won't go through all the points. I think I don't want to bore anybody, but I think these are important points, of course. And the most important one, I would say, to mention is that we want to achieve a rapid and fluid exchange of data, information, and knowledge, as I already mentioned, actually, among researchers worldwide, which would be an important facilitator for scientific progress. Next slide, please. So we are evolving the declaration into let's say, an action path, where we hope to, in particular, when we talk about capacity development and youth, involvement of youth and of students, it's the dissemination of new knowledge in innovation and science and technology from GEO, from AfriGEO, from AmeriGEO, from EuroGEO, and from Copernicus and other institutions related to Earth observation, in particular, through the channel of the national, the research and education networks and their institutions. So the idea would be the creation and support to learning communities, and in the end, the articulation for the design of innovation in science and technology curricula. So next slide, please. So that would be the main parts of the message that I wanted to share with you, and in order to open further discussion, of course, about the involvement of research and education networks to the efforts of the academic community, education community, and the youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. So that sort of set the stage with what the research networks, how the research networks connect to this. So what we might tease out a little bit further in the interactive sessions will be understanding that current role and what a future role might be as far as engaging youth within the GEO track could be. So it's now time for to get some sense of the youth perspective into this conversation. So without any further ado, please, Catherine.
All right, thank you very much. This is my first time in Ghana, and I still feel so welcome. Thank you, the Ghana people, for welcoming us. I arrived here on Sunday night, and while at the airport, waiting for my shuttle to connect to the hotel where I'm staying, I interacted briefly with a lady called Makabe, if I get the name right. And we just, exchanged pleasantries. And then when we reached at the hotel, she told me there is going to be a plenary discussion. Would you like to participate? So why am I telling you about that short story? It's because I was open to networking. I was open to share what I'm doing and to listen to someone else. And that is how I also got the opportunity as a youth to stand here at this platform. So it's actually my first time to also share and participate in such a big platform. So I'm really humbled. I would say that I have not much of experience in working with big organizations, but then also I would be saying something different because I've had an opportunity to work with geoinformation communication in Uganda when I just completed my bachelor's in land surveying and geomatics at Makerere University. Then later on, I went to work at the National Forestry Authority in Uganda as a cartography officer. And that is where I stepped further into my career and joined the ITC in 2019 to do my master's in geoinformation science. And where my passion is disaster risk reduction. And now I'm still with ITC and I'm doing my PhD. So when I look back at how my career has been progressing, in my personal experience, I would say it's because I have been open and I have also put myself out there to be known and to be seen. And that is why for a session like this, as a youth, I would not miss. So right now, this is about the youth, but I do not see a lot of youth in the audience. And we want to have them more engaged in Earth observation. We want to hear their perceptions and how we can work together and improve their engagements. So I would follow the list of questions that I was given here to give my personal experience. Something about current ways in how the youth can engage in GEO. I would start with having such a kind of platform. I am standing here and I am participating. People would not know me if I am not standing here. So when we have such platforms, conferences, symposiums, even just at the local setting, like back in our countries, when you have small groups, to say, for example, women, maybe just students at the universities engaged in their different departments, I think this is how we can have youth engaging more in the GEO and Earth observation community. Also, participation in research and innovativeness. I myself am a researcher. I never visioned myself taking that career direction. But I think in the different platforms that we have, the different working groups, if we have our youth represented, our youth participating, it would be a nice platform to have them even more motivated to attend. Because, sorry to say this, I joined the platform just this morning, the panel just this morning, and from the look of things, it looks like I'm more of the youth of the panel, not to say that. So we can have more platforms, having them participate in conferences, having them know about the different research programs that are available so that we can have them come around, interact with even the professionals. Because from where we come from, if you have people who are so much experienced, you want to learn from them and get to know their different ideas. Something about the incentives for the youth to engage and how these incentives can be strengthened. I've talked about starting small, participating in small groups, but also availing opportunities like internships, because I understand GEO is on a global level. So how about if we are collaborating with other international organizations, we have other youth from different parts of Africa, in this case we are in Africa, being considered for different internships, training opportunities. If there are scholarships, exchange programs, I think this would encourage our youth to be open to participating and also collaborate in the usage of Earth observation. When I reference back to the work that I'm doing, I'm using Earth observation, but for me it comes from passion, because where I come from we have suffered with flooding, especially in the capital city. So when I was studying, I looked at this problem that we are facing as a country or as a city, and then I decided I need to learn more about this. I need to know which solutions can we use to tackle this challenge. So for me, it was not just about learning the skill in Earth observation, but how can I impact my community? How can I impact where I come from? And now it is not only stopping in Kampala, where I come from, but now I'm doing something not just for Africa, but something that can be useful for the world at large, if I could say, because the systems that I'm studying, they impact very many areas along the tropical equator. So our youth should be given a platform to see where their passion is and how can they now participate or solve or add on their passion in the usage of Earth observation skills. And in terms of the small groups, these groups cannot only stand if they do not have supported funding. Because we can have a lot of innovative ideas, but how about the financial perspective? Because most of these innovations, to be pushed forward, they need to be funded or they need to be supported. So when we have the youth participating, it would be also a nice incentive to have them supported financially, the small groups especially. I learned that we have youth that have been supported to come and participate in this conference, and I think that is a starting point. So, thoughts about post-2025. You know, I complete my research, hopefully, by 2025, and when I read this statement, I thought, what am I going to do after 2025 when I finish my research? So, In terms of the youth perspective, I was having a discussion this morning with one of my colleagues, and she informed me about the work programs that the GEO has, programs under climate change, water, disaster risk reduction, and even in those work programs, we have sub-programs, if I could say. So we were thinking, how about if we have the youth participating in these programs? Not just having them represented, but also holding them accountable, because if you have them coming from different countries, then they are able to engage with other smaller groups, if I could say so, and they get information from the top, if I could say so. They engage their fellow youth at the lower level, come up with reports which can be included maybe in the original report, maybe it could be a chapter talking about what the youth are doing in the different countries. So post-2025, we hope to have our youth engaged, more in Earth observation, but then this has to be two-way. Like I said earlier, I do not see a lot of youth in the audience. So you cannot, this is something that I learned recently, it's a direct translation from Dutch, that you cannot pull a dead horse. So we want them engaged, but even themselves need to make themselves, they need to be available to participate in all of these programs that we are planning. Well, I myself am available, and some of the colleagues here are available. So let's hear from them and know what they would like us to tackle post-2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. So I take the point that the panel could be younger, and that it might help, to have younger people on the panel actually discussing the topic. But what I also took away from your talk was that, in terms of engaging the youth, now what the education networks have going in their favor is that they are also networks of campuses, which the youth generally tend to be in. So one way we could look at this is how we could leverage these frameworks to engage the youth that are on these campuses and connected to these campuses. So that's clearly something we need to consider. So we are going to have an interactive session, but before we do that, I just wondered if anybody on the panel had a quick remark to make now that we've had those two presentations. And please.
Hello. Yeah, I actually found that quite inspirational. Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts on, well, everything that you said. I agree with you. As I don't know whether I'm considered youth. When I was invited, I thought, well, I'm not 40 yet. I'm still under 40. But is that youth? Where's the cutoff? But I agree that we need to be available. If I'm considering myself youth, we need to be available to participate in these activities, as well as the opportunities made available to us, and for us to be helped and guided in understanding what we don't know. If we're talking about a legacy that the current generation who are in charge want to leave the younger generations, help us to understand how to make this work, give us the tools and the opportunities, and encourage us, and not just kind of pat us on the head and say we need to do more. I think we need to think about how we educate younger generations into being involved in these types of communities at an international level. So yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm here in education, tools and services. Now this again is, that's an area where universities, campus networks, research networks can also connect, because you can provide tools and services with the NRENs, and then there's capacity building generally. That's a native feature of those communities. But if Andreas is ready, I think sorry? You have a comment? Oh, sorry, thank you, Michael, please. Or you can use.
Yeah, I suppose we all have a few things to say on any of these topics. Thank you very much for the perspective from the students. I think one of the things we can all discuss at some point is that we are not youth, we're not students, but we are in charge. And the people who are in charge need to be educated also regarding what needs to happen 2025 and beyond. So if we have not retrained ourselves, if we're not aware of what the new possibilities are, how are we going to put into place the mechanisms, the networks, et cetera, that the next generation is expecting? So just a sort of a silly example is that if people my generation were going to write a research paper together, we would use Microsoft Word, and I would, write a few chapters, and I would send it to you as an attachment. And our students look at that and say, that's not how you do things these days. You go on to Google Docs, or you go on to Office 365, and you share the document. So the new generation is expecting to be online. A lot of our GIS and remote sensing curriculum materials are not aimed at being online. They're aimed at being in a laboratory. And we've been in the same laboratory for 25 years now. That's not an awful lot of innovation. So if we're not capable ourselves of sort of snapping out of the older way of doing things, how are we expecting ourselves to be facilitating the youth who are accustomed to doing things in a new way? So I think we can have that interesting discussion amongst people who are not youth. How can we best retrain ourselves and realign our own thinking so we can best help the next generation?
Yeah, for me, I want to speak to youth. We are not here to, for me at least, we are not here to guide you, but we are here to help you. It's your future, and you need to decide. So then your engagement is very important, and thank you for setting that for the discussion. We can help, as I said. We are developing good infrastructure for you. We are developing making, it's not us actually, Open Science now, another facilitating option. And also, I think we are giving you, the old generation, we're trying to see what you have learned, but also what we have also damaged and destroyed before, to hand you something that is not, let's say, not a good situation in terms of climate or in terms of anything, other things. So I think you are taking the challenge is again by working together, taking the new trends of doing research, new mechanisms of collaboration, and work all together through good infrastructure and through good services that we are here to provide you with. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusuf. So I'm hearing two things. So there's Michael, you're saying we need feedback. You need to tell us what's missing. You need to tell us how we help you, because we are the ones that are going to help you. And then I'm also hearing you saying, oh, we can give you infrastructure, but we need use cases. We need something, we need to tailor this infrastructure to your needs. So we need feedback from you so we know exactly what to include in our strategy moving forward for GEO. So I think, yes, Andreas, if you're ready, this is the time we get some feedback from the audience. And then, so this is what they need to do. Join Slido on their mobile phones. So if you go to slido.com on your mobiles, please. It's on the board, slido.com, and then type in that number. Let me see if I scan the QR code. So I'll join you so I know exactly what's happening too. So Andreas, are you going to be assisting? Excellent. Thank you. So you have the first question there. I can see some participants already typing. So we just want to get a sense of where you're from and what is your affiliation. Oh, right. So we have nobody from Africa? Oh, excellent. Okay, the first one. Okay, so this is a warm-up question to get a sense of where we're from. We can see we have people from Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, the European Commission, Red Clara, OpenStreetMap in Uganda. Excellent. So you've got, oh, okay. The young surveyors. Hey, this one for young people. So yes, Andres, anytime you're ready. So now we all know how this works. Thank you very much. Now the information on these slides will remain, so we should be able to get a sense of what's going on there. Okay, so quite a few spread across the world. Countries from the region also, impressive turnout from the region, so that's good. So yes, Andres, I think we can go on now and have the next questions and start to ask the audience. So please respond to the poll and tell us how you use Earth observation, if you do. It seems that most of the audience use Earth observations as researchers and for work, although there's other applications which seems to be a high percentage there as well. I'm intrigued about the personal interest, so we'll find out a little bit more about that as we progress. It appears we have mostly researchers, 43% of the room, and those who use Earth observation for work. So I presume we have online participants as well in this survey, which is good. Now, one question that we must have in this poll, Andreas, is if they are youth, so we know exactly who is who.
Someone's just shouted from the audience, what is the definition of youth?
If you were youth, you won't be asking. I think the widely accepted, I think that varies from region to region, but the widely accepted definition is somewhere between 18 and 35 to 40, I think. I'm not a youth, so I can't be so precise. So, Catherine, what is the youth these days?
Okay, interesting question. I believe this talk is for youth and young professionals, so I think it wouldn't matter the age.
So I like to use that whole, between youth and early career researchers, we've got a broad enough definition of youth. Now, for early career researchers, we generally say that's 10 years within a PhD. So it would mean, from, I suppose, 10 years within a PhD would be, you, Michael, you should be the expert at this.
Before people would finish a PhD at 30, but now some people start at 30. Just saying that in previous times, people would finish a PhD at 30. Now, oftentimes, people are starting a PhD at 30. It doesn't really matter. So I think early career makes sense. You can have people in their 40s or 50s who decide to change their direction and create start a new career. So I personally am not in favor of using youth. I think early career makes more sense. But in general, I think we're talking about young people who haven't entered the workforce yet or have just started, maybe.
So I think that's an acceptable definition. So we would also include those that actually, when in terms of youth, in the much younger people in this context, who are not necessarily, PhDs, but younger people that we want to engage. So that's almost that's a tie for the use of Earth observation. So as researchers and for work. Andreas, what's the next question? So this is actually quite appropriate since the audience is mostly researchers and work. How would the applications be most relevant, EO applications be most relevant to you in the future, in your career and for society? So that also allows everybody who is in the room to provide an opinion. Yes, I like that. I'm unfamiliar with EO applications, so need more information. I think that's a task for the education networks, and so one of the things, I suppose the input we want moving forward, how do we make sure this information is available? Now, Michael, could you speak to the feedback we are getting? Because it's all mixed, and I thought you're the expert there. So we're getting, yes, please.
The first thing that occurs to me is that we've got more thematic applications, so people talking about climate and earthquakes, et cetera. We've got people talking more about methodologies such as cloud and online services and that sort of thing. So I guess it depends on how you define application, software application or sort of substantive field or sort of field of research. So it's interesting that people are interpreting both, and we're seeing quite a few people who are expressing interest in the methodology or sort of the way of doing things, not just the topic itself.
Right, okay, so that's something to bear in mind. So it's a mixed bag there, so applications, themes, topics, all mixed. And I saw some cloud computing and data hubs as well. But so now this is from when I think about you're talking about the GEO tracks. Do you recognize how many of this, fit into that?
I have seen climate studies, disaster risk reduction. I've seen actually most people talking about flood hazard assessment, but that all is disaster risk reduction. I saw someone talked about water management earlier. It's not here on the screen. So I think that fits in the working groups that GEO has. So I think this is very relevant, and your interests are about right, I should say. Seeing something about agriculture that would relate to also food security. And then also a comment about someone who said they are not informed about Earth observation. That is also fine, because people tend to change the career path, like he mentioned earlier. So depending on where your interests are, you're changing career path and you want to learn about Earth observation, but what exactly do you want to use the Earth observation for? So I think that is where you need to start from, know which specific application that you want to use, and then later on, we can help you and you see how we can engage you. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And as someone not so clear, so I see something like, data-driven application development. Now I can see tools and services. I can see that, based on the data, developing tools, using the data and applications in that way. That might be what they mean. Well, thank you for that. I think we have a good sense of what's happening. I don't see anybody else typing in, so there's one. But I think we're ready for the next question. Now, this is interesting. So this is where we really need some clear feedback. What do you see, or where do you see the biggest opportunities and challenges for youth engagement in GEO? So some of you might already have some experiences that you can use to provide some insight. And some of you might have had projects that have unearthed challenges that you think we can work out collectively. Hello? Yes, you can. Please, can you pass the mic? And please, anybody who wants to join us, let's know by raise of your hand, a show of hands, and we'll get you a mic.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask a question to the audience, and probably if Andreas can put this as a next question on Slido. So before the previous questions, we had very various answers from the community, from the audience, saying that the applications they would like to see and have available relate, to urban, to climate change, to water, to all of this is already covered by the work of GEO through its work program, its working groups on climate, on disaster risk reduction, and so on. So my question would be, and maybe we can put that on Slido after, to see from people that are online and participating in the Slido, how aware they are about GEO's work, and because we're thinking now about including youth, but do we have actually people be aware about what GEO is doing? Thanks.
So if I understand you correctly, we're saying okay, we want to include youth, but in the first instance, how aware are we of GEO and its work program? So we don't have very many people in the room, but we can use Slido to get a sense of that. All right. So Andreas, please, as a subsequent question. But the answers here have been very interesting, and it's a pity that it's a continuous slide. But I've seen different questions, different responses. It looks like community engagement, working with youth networks seems to be a theme. There is a communication strategy that showcases GEO work. GEO is not known in most areas and what they do. There's an answer to your question before we even put it forward. Limited opportunities. Now, at some point, Michael, I will want you to speak to that. Somebody thinks there are limited opportunities. I want to see if you agree. Oh, there's an anonymous one that says project-driven learning about GEO on campuses. Now, interestingly, that is also one I subscribe to because we actually, last week in Ghana, we had an open science symposium that had a particular focus on early career researchers. And one of the outcomes of the breakout groups that we had was that the early career researchers wanted more opportunity to drive projects on the infrastructure that the research networks were building, projects that were linked with the work they would do. So that might be one way in which the education networks might connect youth on campuses, or early career researchers to GEO-related projects. And there's another one, as like mentioned by Catherine, about limited sponsorship opportunities. So that's also another area to consider. It seems to be that resonates with young people. And an opportunity to link students on various campuses to create awareness on climate change and sustainable development projects. The challenge is with funding, as it is the case quite often, but another advantage of campuses is that there are also locations where these young people are in close proximity, so it limits or at least it reduces the funding requirement. So, Andres, I hope we'll be able to sort of synthesize this into responses at some point, because there are very good responses here. And we'll allow the two participants that are currently typing to finish, and maybe we would ask the next question. Right, so this is the extent of awareness of the GEO work program activities. So it's a sliding scale, 1 to 7. Now that's now if I understand that, if I read that correctly, it is saying that almost 50% have limited awareness of GEO activities. So that's certainly the work to be done there by GEO on a broad scale, and it might just be that it is something we might be able to use the youth track to extend that a little bit. So maybe that's a consideration in how we popularize GEO work program activities. This we can certainly improve, I think. Yes, Andre?
Yes, so thanks. And this is approximately what I was thinking of when asking that question. So we see that the awareness is not very good. In the next session, we'll have something with GEO work program activities presenting their youth initiatives. So in the water-related area, we have a couple of activities that are developing early career societies and so on. So this could probably be a good example and way forward for other work program activities. Thanks.
Thank you. So yes, Andres, is there a next question? What will be your dream situation when it comes to Earth observation? Now this is open. You're very welcome to dream and be aspirational as you like. Open access to data. Now that's the first response after my heart, because I think that's also one way we can engage more researchers in early career societies by giving them the tools and the data to work with. Food security. Data comes to me. I think that is that's same as open access. Easy data discovery. Now that's a challenge that the research networks should be able to take up in providing systems to make data discoverable for researchers and users. So there are quite a few options here for the GEO Secretariat to take note of. Movement of arms and weapons. I think somebody needs to explain that to me. Or is that some kind of super spy satellites, sort of scoping everybody? But yes, interesting responses. Interesting responses. Michael, what would be a national GEO database?
Well, there are many national GEO databases. Could be some sort of a particular theme, such as demographics, census data, boundaries. On the imagery side, of course, some sort of national coverage. But I'm not sure there is such a thing, or there should be such a thing as national imagery these days. So, yeah, good question.
Now, I see real-time satellite data. In terms of, just to highlight another benefit of research networks, which, by the way, are almost everywhere around you, as you saw from the first presentation, is that terrestrial links actually provide lower latency, so it is easier to have real-time data over terrestrial links, and then that's also another advantage that your research network provides. Just mentioning that. Okay, Andreas, I think we have enough feedback on that, and I can see that. Okay, we do have 10 more minutes, but I would like us to round up this interaction and have some last remarks from the panel. So, is this the last question? It is. Now, is there something you would like to convey to Post-25 working group in considerations of a Post-25 GEO? And if there's anybody in the audience who would like to speak, please let us know, and we'll let you have the mic. more incentives for youth engagement. We've heard about scholarships, capacity building, providing data, tools, engaging them to connecting with youth networks. GEO is an acronym, and somebody thinks it's a barrier to understanding who and what they are. It's Global Earth Observations Group, or is it the Group on Earth Observations? It's the Group on Earth Observations. Involvement of youth engagement from different countries. Now, that brings something to mind. In the internet governance world, there's also a notion of youth groups, and they've sort of matured that construct such that the groups are a little bit more autonomous and they interact with each other. So that might be also a consideration from the GEO perspective, especially if we can adopt that, leveraging an existing framework like the NRENs, who already have connections with campuses. So what we will do now in the last 10 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, is that we will have a couple of minutes of some final remarks, and then I would like you to do is take this into consideration, what you've heard here, and just sort of share some final thoughts. So if we start with Chris from the far end, and then we'll let the questions keep on going, and then we will skip you, Michael, right? It's Chris, yeah, and to this end, and then Michael, you have some closing remarks.
Thanks very much, Omar. Yeah, I think this is quite positive. I was surprised at how many people were actually responding to the Slido. Given the size of the room, I thought that there weren't that many of us here, but it seems that there actually are. I can't really say much about what I disagree with that people are writing down, because I pretty much agree with everything that's been written so far. I think there are a lot of challenges that we need to tackle, but I think if we collaborate together, use a spirit of openness, and bear in mind that we need the capacity building, the training, the opportunities for youth engagement and involvement in the various different parts of GEO, I think, and would be onto a good thing. But they're my brief thoughts, for what it's worth. And yeah, I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, Yusuf.
Yeah, thank you again. I think you said everything. I like what you have, your interventions and your comments, and where, especially the challenges which you have mentioned. Most of them are about funding and engagement. So we are here to get you engaged, and as I said, not to guide you, but to help you. So again, from our end, we are taking all these comments into our planning. It's a call also for regional and international organizations to get youth engaged. From our side, we will get them engaged in all our activities and all our efforts, and we'll publicize this and get, for example, it just came to my mind that our next conference we'll dedicate a session dedicated for youth and invite, and we will fund them and support them to get engaged with our communities and to present their work, and we'll take it further with other activities. Thank you.
Okay, I have also been following the participation from the audience, and I will try to note something that I saw under opportunities and challenges, which is, for me, when I looked, it was something about having few experienced youth with the right expertise. For me, I looked at it as an opportunity and a challenge. An opportunity for those who are much experienced in the industry to train the youth, and then also a challenge for the youth themselves who want to learn more in Earth observation, to make themselves available, and then also to look out for the opportunities. So I believe that the different contributions that you have all given us will contribute to the document that is going to be developed so that we have better strategies to involve the youth. And then also we see how we can be supported as the youth. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Just one last comment from my part, and coming back a bit to the definition of youth and also to the concept of people in charge, as Michael mentioned. I think one key word really for action in any case, for you, the youth, and for the people in charge is openness. Openness to new ideas, openness to new knowledge, openness to new modalities of interaction which are taking place through the digital era. I think this is really the key words that will define how we will take up action, in particular in the realm of Earth observation. And besides that, of course, extending this, the concept of openness to the openness to data, to the information and knowledge. No, that this is really what I take out from our discussion, and for the possible agenda on Earth observation. Thank you.
I fully agree. There's openness at all levels, openness at connecting with the communities, and openness with infrastructure and governance. So, but yes, so Michael, please can you just finish up and close us up?
Thank you very much. It's on, yeah. I can do the clicker. Thank you. So I just have 2 slides, and I wasn't planning to summarize with these 2 slides. I was planning for them to be in the middle somewhere, but anyway, I'll do my best. Thanks again to the organizers. It's been a very interesting panel, and I'm very happy to have participated with the research organizations and with the research networks, because I think we have some interesting opportunities there. If we think about what we mean by post-2025, we may mean that we're looking into the future and asking ourselves, what will post-2025 look like? And of course, none of us have a crystal ball, but one of the things we can be sure of is that if we go back 3 years, we can ask ourselves, what were we doing 3 years ago, and have we made any major changes with regard to what we're doing today? And I think most of us would have to admit that we're more or less doing the kinds of things we were doing 3 years ago still today. So I can imagine that we could come back in 2025 or 2026 and have to admit that we're doing things more or less as we were doing them in 2022. Or we can be a little bit more ambitious starting today, and we can think about how we can take advantage of these research networks and our own capabilities and the interaction between public sector, private sector, and all of the various players, and we can start to do a little bit more. My own bias when I think of 2025 is capacity development. So what should we be teaching ourselves and younger people to be prepared for 2025 and beyond? We talk a lot about 21st century skills. Still, we've been in the 21st century for 22 years, and we're still talking about these new, fantastic 21st century skills. Think about that. On one hand, we always are concerned about the speed of progress in technology. We can't keep up. Everything's changing so fast. But yet we're still basically doing many of the same things we were doing 22 years ago today. So we need to ask ourselves, when are we going to make this shift, this radical shift? And so with my industry hat on, rather than my professorial hat on, industry is worried that we're not making a fast enough shift into what we might call modern GIS and modern EO. We're still doing things like downloading images to our local machines, and we're still producing shapefiles. We need to start sort of making the shift towards doing more on the cloud and working with more modern data structures, etc. So more cloud-based work, not just talking about the cloud, but actually using the cloud more often in our own workplace. The youth are accustomed to living on the cloud. They might not realize it, but every time they're watching a football game or a movie, or they're interacting on social media, or they're sharing documents, they're on the cloud. They're cloud users, but maybe they need to be a little bit more equipped to be cloud providers as well. And cloud, not sure what the intermediate step is there, but to be prosumers, not only consuming but producing content and utilizing the cloud for that as well. And hand in hand with being cloud-based is not just we go to the cloud to download something, but we're utilizing services on the cloud. And increasingly, GIS is moving to the cloud. And I don't need to worry about what kind of machine do I have on my desk, or does my laboratory at the university have enough modern machines, because increasingly we use any machine to connect to the cloud, and we do our processing there, we have our data there, we do our heavy lifting there. So this is a radical new paradigm that in theory we were able to do 3 years ago, but we weren't. And now we've advanced to 2022, and we're starting to do it. But we should ask ourselves, are we going to be working really in the cloud in 2025? Are we going to be accessing and processing and creating value in the cloud? Or are we still going to be downloading things and producing shapefiles? So I think we need to think about that. I try to teach my students, and we should be teaching our students to be, as I mentioned, data creators and data sharers, not only data consumers. Some of my students in our international master's degree would tell me, oh, my government doesn't provide that data. We can't analyze that particular topic. And we tell them, well, we have drones, we have mobile devices, we have lots of information on the web, we have lots of imagery that's available. Why are we waiting for our national whatever agency to provide the data to us? We can become data creators and analyzers ourselves. I think we can do a better job at talking about specific case studies and workflows. And what industry means by workflow is what are the processes and what are the methodologies we need to follow to be able to reach our objectives. And we don't tend to talk a lot about workflows in the academic context, but maybe we can do a little bit better job at that. These are just some specific examples of what we're doing at Esri to make concrete contributions to the need of people, young and not so young, to get retraining. We're finding that universities are doing a great job at providing the base education, and the extent to which students have access to smart, engaging, and innovative professors, that's the value add. That's the added value of universities, for sure. But we have more and more people who are coming to us saying, we would like to have more short one-hour modules to get a taste of deep learning, or to get a taste of some sort of EO operations, or get a taste of a particular data format. So a while ago, we created learn.arcgis.com, which is a collection of more than 200 free online courses. No laboratories, no worry about what machines you're using, because we provide the exercises translated into 7 international languages, we provide the data, and we provide the software. I've shown this in our booth to several young people, and they're just amazed. Why didn't I know about this? It's been available for more than 5 years now, right? These little small modules are what people are looking for. And I think we can probably all admit that there are probably more people learning about technologies now using YouTube than there are attending university classes. This is sort of moving in that same direction. Also, the massive online open courses. You've seen many of them around, and there are many people taking good advantage of that. We started creating our own massive online courses. The Living Atlas of the World is a huge collection of openly available data sources, such that people don't have to start digitizing their world anymore. They can start with lots of different base layers. The Africa GEO portal takes advantage of those base data layers and makes them freely available to anyone who can come into the portal, register themselves freely, and start utilizing the data, but more importantly, publishing their results to everyone else and sharing data. So these are just specific examples, but I encourage everyone across industry and in academia to follow this pattern. And I think this is where we can perhaps most productively collaborate in the coming years. The research networks that we heard about this morning have been around for many years. In essence, they were way ahead of their time. Now that they're mature, we can make best use of them because we have access to specific cloud services. And we can start creating small modules of learning materials such that people can, in a classroom or at home or at the coffee shop, start learning what they need to learn and start moving forward. So my recommendation is that we do a better job at getting together to exploit the networks that are already available, exploit the cloud services that are already available, and we start creating together some very specific learning materials so that we don't just talk about capacity development, we start doing capacity development. And the way that these courses work is that the popular ones remain and survive. The unpopular ones get deprecated and disappear. It's not a problem. It's a very quick way to learn what people like and are getting value from and which ones they're not interested in. I think we can do a better job at collaborating and doing these sorts of things. And again, it doesn't have to be our technology, it can be any kind of technologies, but I think this way of working is more in line with 21st century skills development and resource creation. So those would be my closing comments. I really appreciated all the different perspectives, and as was mentioned earlier, great that our scattered audience also had a lot of participation and some really good ideas. So I appreciate the opportunity again, and happy to take questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I actually think that's a great idea, about bringing these capacity building elements together and seeing how we can leverage what's available. And because when you were speaking, I was thinking about a workframe project called the Africa Digital Campus, which is essentially providing e-learning infrastructure in the countries. We are piloting in 2 countries at the moment, and the idea is to create that, hopefully include other NRENs in the same basic model. And in that construct, I can see a GEO F observation sort of agenda that we could develop, where we would have these short courses or other kinds of courses as the case may be. Now, if there are any questions for Michael, this is the time to take them before we wrap up. I am conscious that we have just about run out of time. You have any questions in the audience? Just put your hand up and we'll get the mic to you. Well, if not, thank you very much for your time. You've been a very interactive audience, and thank you for your contributions on Slido. And thank you very much to the panel for your input. The next session will be here, I think, on the work program after the tea break, I think, at 11. So thanks again. Bye-bye.